Have you ever felt completely betrayed by someone you trusted the most? That's exactly what happened to me, and here's where the story begins. I discovered something about my husband that not only shattered my world, but also opened a door I never thought I would walk through. My name is Sarah. I had always considered myself to have a good life. I was married to the man I thought was my soulmate. He was loving, attentive, and we shared dreams of a beautiful future together. We planned our life, we talked about children, and we built our home around a love that I believed would last forever. He was everything I wanted in a partner. But little did I know, something dark was lurking beneath the surface of my perfect life. A secret he had been hiding for far too long. That secret would soon change everything I thought I knew about him and about myself. It all began on a quiet Sunday evening. I had just returned home from a weekend getaway with friends. It had been a great trip, relaxing, fun, and much needed. I walked into the house, ready to unwind and spend some time with my husband. But something felt different, like an uneasy stillness hanging in the air. I brushed it off, thinking I was just tired from the trip. I went about unpacking, trying to shake off the nagging feeling in my gut. Then, my eyes caught something unusual. My husband's phone was on the kitchen counter, buzzing. I figured he must have left it there before heading out, but the name flashing across the screen made my heart stop. It was a woman's name I didn't recognize. I quickly glanced at the voicemail notification and hesitated for a second before pressing play. Her voice was soft, almost sweet, but there was something about it that made me uncomfortable. "I'll see you later tonight," she said. The tone of her voice, the familiarity with which she spoke, it sent a chill down my spine. I'd never heard her name before, and yet she sounded like she was part of his world. I had no idea who she was, but I could tell it wasn't just a casual friendship. My heart started to race and my mind began spinning. Could this be the start of something I had never imagined? I tried to calm myself, to reason that maybe it was just a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I waited for him to return, hoping I would be able to push the feeling aside, to shake off the dread that was creeping in. I tried to focus on something else, but my mind kept drifting back to the voicemail, to the sound of her voice. When Jack finally walked through the door, he was smiling, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. I noticed it immediately. He was always so warm, so present when he came home. But tonight there was a distance I couldn't ignore. He kissed me like he always did, but there was a hesitance in it, a lack of enthusiasm that made my stomach turn. I tried to ask him about the voicemail, but his reaction was immediate and defensive. "It's nothing, just a work thing," he said, brushing it off like it was no big deal. But I could see in his eyes that he was hiding something. The words didn't add up. If it was just work, why did it sound so personal? Why was he so evasive? When I asked about it, I didn't want to push him too hard, but the doubt was settling in. This wasn't the man I thought I knew. This wasn't the relationship we had built together. As the night went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, the voicemail replayed in my head. The more I thought about it, the more the puzzle pieces started to fit together. Jack had been acting differently over the past few weeks. Distant, distracted, secretive. Had I been too blind to see it? Had I been so caught up in my own world that I missed the signs? I needed answers, and I wasn't going to rest until I got them. But little did I know, this was just the beginning of the unraveling. The more I dug, the darker the truth became. The man I had loved for years, the one I thought I could trust above all others, had been hiding something from me. Something that would change everything I believed about him and about myself. Before the discovery, everything in my life seemed perfect. I had a great job, a loving husband, and a supportive family. Jack, my husband, was everything I wanted. He was my rock, my partner in life, the person I'd always believed I could count on. We spent our weekends together, laughing at silly things, enjoying each other's company. We had our routines, our little inside jokes, and it all felt so right. We'd often talk about starting a family, growing old together, and living a life filled with love and happiness. I was so sure that we were both on the same page about our future. We were building a life together, a home, and I thought there was nothing that could shake us. It was a life I thought was unshakable. But all of that changed slowly, almost imperceptibly. At first, I didn't notice the small cracks that started to form. They were subtle, things I could explain away. Jack started coming home later from work, staying out longer than usual. At first, I thought maybe he was just busy, maybe stressed out. I tried not to think much of it, convincing myself that everything was fine. But then, when we did spend time together, there was a distance between us that hadn't been there before. His laughter didn't quite reach his eyes, and his usual warmth felt distant. It didn't help when he became defensive whenever I asked about his day. Simple questions, like how was work, or what did you do today, were met with vague answers. His responses were short, almost robotic, like he was avoiding something. One day I noticed a strange message on his phone, one I hadn't seen before. It was from a woman's name I didn't recognize. I casually asked him about it, thinking it was no big deal. But when I brought it up, his reaction was swift and defensive. "It's nothing," he said. "Just a colleague." The way he said it, so quickly, without much thought, made my stomach twist. I wanted to trust him, but something inside me told me there was more to the story. It was that gut feeling, that nagging instinct that I couldn't shake off. After a few more days of this odd behavior, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was off, and I needed to find out what. One evening, after Jack had given me yet another vague excuse, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I wasn't proud of it, but I knew I had to know the truth. I waited until he took his usual shower, and then, with shaky hands, I grabbed his phone. I had never felt this kind of doubt before, this deep, unsettling need to know what was really happening. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but when I unlocked his phone, I was hit with something that made my stomach drop. There it was, a conversation between Jack and a woman named Lisa. "I can't wait to see you tonight," it read. "I miss you." My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the words for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Lisa. She wasn't just a colleague. There was something far deeper going on here. This wasn't a casual friendship. This was something more, something I wasn't prepared for. But what shocked me even more was how calmly I was reading it. It wasn't anger I felt, at least not yet. It was a crushing realization, a realization that my husband, the man I had trusted more than anyone in this world, had been hiding this secret life from me. I wasn't ready to confront him yet. I needed to be sure, to find more, to understand the full extent of what had been happening. My hands shook as I put his phone back in its place, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I had discovered something I could never unknow, but I had to be smart. I couldn't let him know what I had found. I had to gather the pieces, wait for the right moment. The truth was finally out there, and now I had to make sure I was prepared to face the man I thought I knew. The next few days felt like a blur, each one blending into the other. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. My mind was racing with questions. So many questions. Who was this woman, Lisa? How long had Jack been seeing her? Why had he kept this from me? Every time I tried to push it out of my mind, the haunting thought came rushing back. I needed answers. I had to know what was really going on. I decided to dig deeper. It wasn't enough to just know her name. I needed to understand the full extent of what Jack had been hiding. So I started researching. I went through his phone, again looking for anything that could lead me to Lisa's full name, any hint of her background. Slowly, bit by bit, I pieced together what I could. I found her social media profiles, her job details, and eventually I discovered something that sent chills down my spine. Lisa wasn't just some woman Jack had been texting casually. She was someone he had been seeing for months. They had exchanged hundreds of messages, made plans, shared intimate details. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-fledged relationship. And Jack had been keeping it hidden from me all this time. The betrayal was suffocating. It felt like my entire world had been turned upside down in an instant. The man I thought I knew, the man I trusted more than anyone, had been living a double life. It was a reality I could barely comprehend, but I couldn't deny what I had discovered. When the truth hit me, it felt like my heart stopped beating. It wasn't just shock that gripped me. It was a devastating mix of emotions: rage, confusion, disbelief. How could Jack do this to me? How could he betray everything we had built together? He was the man I had shared my dreams with, the person I had believed in. But now, all of it felt like a lie. The pain in my chest was almost unbearable, but I couldn't look away from the evidence. My hands were trembling as I stared at the messages, the photos, everything that showed the depth of Jack's betrayal. The reality was crashing down on me, and I couldn't seem to make sense of it. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was no denying it anymore. Jack had been hiding something from me, and now it was all laid out in front of me. I felt like I was suffocating in the weight of the truth. How could he have done this? How could he have kept such a huge part of his life from me? I couldn't let it go. Not like this. I wasn't going to sit back and let him get away with it. I wasn't going to let him tear apart everything we had built without facing the consequences of his actions. Jack had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and I wasn't going to let him walk away from it. I had been blindsided, yes, but now I had control. I wasn't going to be a passive victim. I started making plans, carefully and strategically. I couldn't just confront him without being prepared. I needed to expose his lies, to show him that I wasn't someone he could just walk all over. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about taking back my power. I needed to understand why he did this, why he kept me in the dark for so long. I would get justice, and I would do it on my terms. This was my life, and I wasn't going to let Jack or anyone else take that away from me. The wheels were in motion, and I was ready for what came next. I took a deep breath and started plotting my next steps. The weight of everything that had happened was still heavy on my chest, but I wasn't going to confront Jack without having all the facts. I knew this was my chance to expose him fully, and I wasn't about to waste it. I gathered everything: his financial records, his text messages, the emails I had found, and the research I'd done on Lisa. I even reached out to some of Jack's friends, discreetly asking if they knew about his affair. I needed to be sure that when I confronted him, I would have everything I needed to take him down. No more lies, no more excuses. I wasn't just going to catch him in a lie. I was going to destroy the life he had built on secrets. The more I uncovered, the more disgusted I became. Jack had been living a double life, hiding his affair from me, from everyone. I could see the extent of his deceit in every piece of evidence I collected, and the anger inside me was growing by the day. But I knew that anger alone wouldn't be enough. I needed to stay focused, to make sure everything was perfectly in place before the confrontation. This wasn't just about punishing him. It was about reclaiming the control he had stolen from me. And when the time came, I would make sure he would never forget what he had done. The days leading up to the confrontation were filled with tension. Every time Jack looked at me, I had to force myself to act like everything was normal. It was killing me to keep this secret, but I knew I had to stay calm. I had to play this carefully, make sure he never suspected what was coming. Inside, though, the weight of the secret was suffocating. My thoughts raced constantly. What was he thinking? How could he look me in the eye after everything he'd done? I had never felt more betrayed in my life. I thought about the future. We had planned together, the home, the family, the dreams we shared. It was all slipping away, and it wasn't just because of the affair. It was because of the lies. Jack had stolen so much from me. Every time I looked at him, I saw a man who had broken my trust in ways I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I had never been so angry, but I had to stay composed. I was playing the long game. The confrontation was going to be the hardest thing I'd ever do, but I had no choice. I had to make Jack understand the pain he had caused. I couldn't let him get away with this. When the time came, I would make him face the consequences of his actions, and I wouldn't back down. Luckily, I had my best friend Emma by my side. She had always been there for me through thick and thin, and this time was no different. Emma helped me gather the last of the evidence I needed. She knew exactly how serious I was, and she supported me every step of the way. We spent hours going over the details, making sure everything was airtight. Emma even helped me set up a meeting with Lisa. I knew I couldn't do this alone. There were too many emotions involved, too many things that could go wrong. Having Emma there, her unwavering support, gave me the strength I needed to follow through. We worked together, meticulously planning every step. I wanted to make sure that when I confronted Jack, I would have all the facts, and more importantly, I wanted to make sure he knew just how much I had uncovered. He wouldn't see it coming. He thought he could get away with this, but he was wrong. I wasn't just going to expose him for cheating. I was going to expose everything. His lies, his manipulation, the way he'd destroyed everything we built. Jack would be forced to face the consequences of his actions, and when he did, he would wish he had never crossed me. The day finally arrived, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I had spent days, weeks, preparing for this confrontation, making sure that every piece of evidence was ready to be revealed. I had Jack's secrets, Lisa's confession, and all the messages, photos, and emails that had built up like a mountain of lies. It was all about to come crashing down. Jack had no idea what was waiting for him. As he walked through the door, his usual smile was plastered across his face, unaware of what was about to hit him. I had rehearsed this moment in my head so many times, but when it finally came, I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I didn't waste any time. I could feel my pulse quicken, but my voice remained steady, calm, and unwavering. "We need to talk," I said, locking eyes with him. Jack paused, his smile faltering slightly, clearly surprised by the sudden seriousness in my tone. But I wasn't about to let him control the situation anymore. He blinked a few times, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape, but I wasn't giving him that option. "I know about you and Lisa," I said, my words cutting through the air like a sharp blade. The room felt colder in that instant. His face drained of color, and for a moment he stood there, frozen, his mouth opening and closing as if he couldn't find the words. He didn't know how to react, and I could see the panic creeping into his eyes. He opened his mouth, stammering, but the words wouldn't come. He was trying to process what I had just said, but the truth had caught him off guard. He had been hiding it for so long, thinking he could keep his secret life under wraps. But now it was all out in the open, and he couldn't escape it. "You think you can lie your way out of this?" I continued, my voice cutting through the silence like a whip. "You think you can betray me and think I won't find out?" He took a step forward as if to reach for me, but I wasn't about to let him come near. I had already been hurt enough. I had trusted him, believed in him, and now all of that was shattered. There was no going back from this. He wasn't going to control this moment. I was. I had prepared for this. Every word, every movement. I calmly revealed everything I had gathered. His texts, his emails, the photos of him and Lisa together, the countless lies. Jack's face twisted in shock as the full extent of his betrayal hit him. His lips quivered, and his eyes flicked nervously to the ground as if trying to avoid the reality he knew he could no longer escape. You don't understand," Jack stammered, his voice trembling now. "I never meant for this to happen. It just happened, Sarah. I didn't want to hurt you. But it was too late. I wasn't interested in his excuses. The time for apologies had long passed. He had broken my trust in a way that words couldn't fix. I wasn't looking for his remorse. I wasn't looking for him to beg for forgiveness. What I wanted was justice. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done. I wasn't about to let him talk his way out of this. "You thought you could have everything, Jack," I said, my voice unwavering, cutting through the tension. "You thought you could live a double life, lie to me, and think there wouldn't be consequences. But now, everything's falling apart. This is what happens when you betray someone you claim to love." Jack opened his mouth again, but this time no words came out. His eyes were wide with fear now, and I could see it. The realization that his whole world was crumbling. The life he had built, the facade he had maintained, was unraveling right before him. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about everything he had destroyed. I continued to lay it all out, piece by piece. Every text, every email, every lie that had been hidden in plain sight. Jack had no defense, no way to explain his actions. He had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible, and now he had to face the consequences. "This is who you really are," I said, pointing to the mountain of evidence before him. "This is the man you've been hiding, and now everyone will know the truth." I watched him, standing there unable to speak, his face flushed with shame and panic. He was crumbling before me, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. For once, I wasn't the one who felt powerless. He was, and it felt good. It felt empowering to finally have control over this situation, to take the narrative back from him. I had been broken, betrayed, and devastated, but now I was standing tall. Jack had been living a lie, and now the truth had come to light. There was no way to undo the damage he had done, no way to fix the mess he had created. "You can apologize all you want," I said, my tone cold and final. "But the truth is, nothing you say will change what you've done. You've lost everything, and this time I'm not the one who's going to pay the price. You are." The silence that followed was deafening. Jack's entire world was falling apart. His job, his reputation, the life he thought he could control, it was all slipping away from him in that moment. He had underestimated me, and now he would pay the price for his lies. I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't feel anything for him anymore. He had taken everything from me, and now I was taking my power back. The payback was sweet, and I could finally see that justice was within my reach. Jack's life was in ruins, and there was no going back for him. He had made his bed, and now he was going to lie in it. The fallout was swift, as if the world had been waiting for Jack's lies to be exposed. The moment the truth came out, everything he had worked so hard to build began to crumble. His reputation, once solid and admired by so many, turned to dust. Business partners who had once trusted him pulled away, their faith shattered by his betrayal. Clients dropped him, refusing to be associated with a man who had lied so blatantly. His friends, those he had considered closest to him, turned their backs on him, no longer willing to stand by a man who had betrayed the very person who had stood by him for years. Lisa, too, was left with nothing. She thought she could have it all: Jack, the life, the future. But when her affair was exposed, everything she had been building came crashing down. The support she thought she had from Jack's side of the world evaporated. The friends who once praised her, who welcomed her into their circle, now distanced themselves. The woman who had seen herself as Jack's new partner was now nothing more than a casualty of his lies, just another pawn in the wreckage of our shared past. But for me, the aftermath was different. I wasn't the same woman who had been hurt, who had felt betrayed. I had stood in the midst of my heartbreak and let it fuel something much stronger. I walked away from the wreckage, not with my head hung low, but with a sense of power I had never felt before. I wasn't just the victim anymore. I had taken back my life, my control, and my dignity. No longer would I be the person defined by Jack's choices, by the lies he told, or the heartache he caused. In the aftermath of everything, I began to see my life for what it was, not a tragedy, but a rebirth. The pieces of myself that had been scattered by Jack's betrayal were now being gathered back together, piece by piece, and I was rebuilding. I no longer saw myself as someone who had been broken. I saw myself as someone who had been tested and emerged stronger on the other side. There was a strange peace that came with taking control. I hadn't just exposed Jack's betrayal for the sake of revenge. I had exposed it because I deserved to know the truth. The closure wasn't just in the exposure of his lies. It was in me standing up for myself, reclaiming my self-respect, and acknowledging that I was worthy of love and trust. What Jack and Lisa did was beyond hurtful, but it had sparked something inside me that I hadn't realized was missing: the ability to stand up for myself and demand better. It was a long time before I could let go of the anger, but that anger didn't consume me. Instead, it became the fuel that drove me forward. I started seeing the world through a different lens. I realized that the power was always in my hands, even when I thought I had lost everything. I didn't need Jack, and I didn't need Lisa. I only needed myself, and once I accepted that, I knew that nothing could break me again. As the days passed, I started to focus on myself in ways I hadn't before. I began rediscovering parts of me that had been buried under the weight of Jack's lies. I focused on my career, my friendships, my passions. Every little step I took away from the past was a victory. I was no longer afraid of moving forward. In fact, I felt liberated. The chains that Jack's betrayal had placed on me were gone, and I was free to be the person I was always meant to be, strong, independent, and whole. I knew that healing would take time, and I wasn't naive enough to believe that the scars would fade instantly. But I also knew that I was no longer defined by my pain. The pain was part of my story, but it didn't have to be the chapter that defined me. I had rewritten my own narrative, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially Jack, have the power to dictate who I was. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my strength, about taking back my life from the man who had stolen it from me. I had found the courage to stand up for myself, to face the truth, and to take control of my future. I didn't need Jack's approval or anyone else's validation. I was enough on my own. I was worthy of happiness, peace, and love. As I walked away from the wreckage of my past, I knew that nothing, no one, could ever break me again. I had faced the hardest truth of my life and come out stronger. I had learned to trust myself, to listen to my instincts, and to never again ignore the signs that something wasn't right. The betrayal had taught me more about myself than I ever could have imagined. And for that, I would always be grateful. My journey wasn't over, but it was mine to navigate. And this time, I was in control. There was a whole world waiting for me, one that I was going to embrace with open arms, knowing that nothing could ever hold me back again. No matter what came next, I knew I had the strength to handle it. The worst had already happened, and I had survived it. Now it was time to thrive. If you've made it this far, I'm sure you felt the weight of this story, just like I did. Life can throw the hardest challenges our way, but it's how we rise from them that truly matters. If this story resonated with you, make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping twists and empowering journeys. Stay tuned for the next chapter of my life, where I continue to take control and turn the page on the past. You won't want to miss what comes next. Thank you for being a part of this journey.